I just got back from this event where I saw what might just be the very best e-bike I've ever seen. All right, I know right now that you're thinking, Alvin, you're just doing clickbait, you're sensationalizing everything. I just got back from this event from a company called Also, which is a spin-off of the EV car company Rivian. They just released a trio of new electric bikes, we're gonna call them. The big one that we're gonna talk about is called the TMB, and that is, I think, if it's not the best e-bike I've ever ridden in my short period of time riding it, it is the most interesting e-bike I've ridden for sure. All right, so the crux of this TMB is a full suspension platform. You have an inverted fork up front, which you don't usually see on anything except for a Cane Creek invert gravel suspension fork, or you see it on a really high-end Fox Enduro fork, which is really good for kind of the supple, small bump compliance stuff here. Also uses it instead so that you can mount a rack to the front. I think that's pretty cool. Back, you have a standard rear shock, and then you have a Gates carbon belt drive and 24-inch wheels. You have a standard handlebar with brakes front and rear. You have a standard saddle where you can raise and lower the saddle if you went for this specific top frame, which is what they're calling it. But after that, I think the similarities between that and a standard bike, much less e-bike, kind of cease. The big thing here, or at least one of the big things here, is something that they're calling the Dream Ride. The Dream Ride is this square area at the bottom of the frame, and that's where the drive units are located, and that's where the battery is located. You can pull out the battery. There are two options available. There's a 535 watt-hour battery, I'll have to correct that offers up to 60 miles of range or 100 kilometers of range thereabouts. And then there's an 808 watt-hour battery that's slightly bigger, but should fit into that same area and offering up to 100 miles of range or 160 kilometers of range. That rear bit of the motor is really interesting because all of this is encased in one cast magnesium chassis, I guess you can call it. And that is the crux of all of these bikes, from the TMB or the rickshaw looking four-wheel bike, or the four-wheeled delivery bike that New York City calls an e-bike. And that is the most interesting bit. One, because it has regenerative braking, because it doesn't have a gearbox, and then also because it allows you to shift gears. All right, so you turn on the bike. Well, you don't really turn on the bike because you pull up with your phone and it has phone as key, just like your electric car. So you pull up to it and it turns on and it recognizes your phone, and then you're good to go. And it starts in an auto setting. So Chris Yu, which is the president of Also, as well as RJ Scaringe, which is the president of Rivian, they were talking about how they wanted to make an e-bike that is imminently accessible for people to use. The idea being that the average e-bike is kind of just tacked on from a standard bike. And so you turn this on, the gear shifts don't happen. I had someone describe it to me as kind of like a continuously variable transmission, or CVT, like you'd expect in a car. But also I had someone else call it a single speed drive unit that adjusts speeds as necessary. Whichever one it is, it was super smooth. From there, you coast, and then the Gates belt drive, which you see on other bikes, keeps on going. However, you pull the brakes, there is a wire going to the front brake caliper and then the rear brake caliper, and you can see on the display, which we will talk a little bit about later as well, where you can see how much regen you're putting into the bike. Also claims that 90% of braking is going to just be done from regen, and so theoretically, as long as you're not braking too hard all the time, you'll be able to just let those brake pads and brake rotors kind of just go and go and go without needing to replace them. And so when you're coasting, the motor essentially is putting in no effort, and the rear wheel is driving that belt forward. You pull the brake and it puts reverse pressure on that rear wheel, and that's where you get braking. Braking nonetheless, super duper strong. Okay, so we've covered the regenerative braking. We covered the single gear system. This whole thing is, I should mention, designed by Also engineers, and so none of this is off the shelf here. The motor is said to offer a peak of 180 Newton meters of torque. They haven't offered a pure watt figure, but they get around that because this offers class 3 assist if you're pedaling up to 28 miles an hour, or if you're using the throttle assist up to 20 miles an hour. And now I need to talk about pedaling because this is the first drive-by-wire e-bike that I've pedaled with. How it works is that as you're pedaling along on a standard e-bike, you are supplementing the electric motor. The idea being that you are helping push a gear, and then there's electric assist to push that gear as well. What's going on here is that you, as you're pedaling, are powering a generator. The motor recognizes how much power the rider is putting in, and then it adds that to the amount of assist it is deciding to dole out at any one specific time. That is the direct drive or drive-by-wire system, and that's how the regenerative braking works. That's how basically the gear shifts work as well. But from the start, the bike that I rode had 10 gears. You use this kind of ring shifter that you'd otherwise use to raise or lower the assist, and in there, you shift between the gears. There isn't a lot of feedback from the lever itself. However, at the feet, you kind of feel this like clack, 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 similar to what you get from a pinion gearbox. One last thing with this drive unit, I mentioned the 538 watt-hour battery. That's the 60-mile, 100-kilometer range with good regen is what they're claiming. But that should be able to not only power your own devices, but it should go from a dead, flat 0% up to 80% capacity in about 2.5 hours is what they're claiming. And that the wire that they're using offers up to 240 watts peak charging ability. And now I need to talk about the controls, which were unlike any other bike I think I've really ever seen. For the most part, e-bike controls feel like they are kind of placed on top of a standard geared bike, which for the most part is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's more or less what I expect. This one feels completely different. So on the left side, you have your left brake lever. Just behind that and before the handlebar, you have a turn signal button that you can actuate with your index finger. And then at your thumbs, you have a standard round button, and then you have this kind of scroll wheel, this knurled scroll wheel that you use to either control the display or control your music, which I'll talk about a little bit later. On the right side, you have your brake lever, you have your index finger turn signal, which works on the both front and rear of the bike. And then you have the ability to either use your throttle with your thumb, or you have this kind of ring shifter that you use to either raise or lower assist in the automatic setting or shift gears in the manual setting. All of this is visible through something that they're calling the portal, which they're saying is a 5-inch diagonal display that's placed on top of the stem. The portal is a touchscreen, and it is a pretty darn responsive one, at least the ones that we use right here. It's got the kind of same style as a modern Rivian touchscreen, and so it looks like it's hand-drawn a little bit, it's cutesy, and it works well, honestly. There's also going to be an app where you'll be able to implement turn-by-turn navigation, which also is really proud of because they're saying it's going to be better than Google Maps cycling turn-by-turn navigation. You can also push updates to it and what have you. There are lights that are integrated in the bike, front and rear. That front light is going to be STVZO rated, and so theoretically this bike should be able to work in places like Germany. The rear light is really interesting, and that is the other part of the frame that I find particularly compelling, because it has an integrated rear light, but it's also designed to be swapped out relatively easily. And so through the screen, you can do things like remove the battery, like unlock the battery and you just pull it out from the side, or you can remove what they're calling the top frame, which kind of controls the size of the bike. There's gonna be a small top frame, a large top frame to fit riders up to 6'6", they're claiming, and then there's gonna be kind of like a banana seat style from like a Schwinn Stingray or a Super 73 e-bike or what have you. The idea there being that they have one chassis to sell between all bikes, but it's also so that if you are one family, you can have a small rider on the bike, and then you can easily swap out that top frame for a large rider and then have a bike that kind of fits properly, more so than just raising and lowering the saddle. There are other things with that top frame that you can adjust. There's also like a spot where you can include a built-in rear rack that has up to 75-pound capacity. This bike has a maximum payload capacity of 324 pounds, I believe. And so the idea is that you can clip on and off a kid seat or a standard kind of just padded area if the kid's a little bit bigger, and you can take that child to school, and then on the way home you can go rip some trails or go commute or what have you, and have a bike that's fun on the weekends and fun on the weekdays as well. All right, I rode this bike, and this is, I think, the thing that really convinced me, is that very immediately it felt so refined. Like the inputs felt very refined. The click of everything was good, maybe not exactly where I wanted it to be. Specifically, that kind of ring shifter wasn't quite as positive as I would like, but everything worked well. The screen was fantastic and very legible. That screen, I should mention, helps control something that they're calling the Alpha Wave helmet. Yes, they designed a secondary helmet. It uses not only the high bar system that we've seen on Canyon's helmets that kind of goes from here and then you push it down instead of like clipping in a buckle. It also has something that they're calling RLS, which also is seen on a Canyon helmet. Instead of there being a MIPS system, it's a bunch of polycarbonate bearings in between the foam and the outer shell of the helmet. It's not MIPS, however, recent testing shows that that new Canyon helmet ranks #1 on the Virginia Tech safety test protocol. And so while this hasn't been tested yet, I have my feelings that this is going to be tested really well. The interesting bit about that helmet isn't just the safety and it isn't just the high bar system, however. It's got integrated lights. It's got a diffused rear light out back, and then it has 2 pointed lights up front that offer up to 75 lumens of light. And so the idea isn't that it's going to be a front light replacement because the bike has front lights, but it's designed to be something to help you see like street names or what have you, because it'll be kind of like a spotlight. It also has speakers, which is something you can actually control through the bike, and you can see what type of music or podcast or what have you you're listening to on the bike. The speakers are kind of like an open ear system like you might see from like a Senna or the laser Velovox system that kind of clamps onto here. However, I think the really interesting bit isn't just the speaker, it's that there are microphones, and so you can talk with one another, you can take a phone call, and there are microphones that are supposed to be noise canceling. The idea being that you can take a Zoom call at 25 miles an hour and people will think that you're not riding your bike around. That was the goal from Chris Yu and from RJ Scaringe. I'd have to test that myself and figure it out, but people that I talked to from there that have been in the bike industry around helmets and other bits of safety for a long time were pretty proud of what they were able to offer. Quoted weight for this helmet is supposed to be about 450 grams, which is heavy, particularly if you're coming from kind of like a performance bike background. But if you're coming from like a 1,000 helmet or something of that variation that's a little bit more commuter oriented, it's actually not all that heavy. Pricing hasn't been announced for that, but there will be 3 sizes, and we will let you know when that is available, because you will be able to use that not just with that also TMB bike, but with any bike and with any phone. Okay, did I sensationalize a little bit with that intro? Perhaps. However, this is easily the most intriguing bike thing of any kind that I've been to in the last few years. The amount of tech here is wild, but not only that, the kind of integration and the polish that we saw early on. I don't expect this to be perfect. I'm sure there's going to be issues early on, but the amount of polish that we were able to see here, it was really darn impressive. The ability to get regenerative braking is really impressive too, and the ease that people had of being able to just hop on the bike. There are a lot of non-cyclists at this thing, and they, I think, were smitten by the bike. And this brings me to the ultimate question. This bike is going to start at $4,500 for the launch model. I believe it's the performance pack that gets you an air sprung fork as well as an air shock, whereas I believe later in the year, in the spring 2026 or summer 2026, you're going to have a bike that comes in at about $4 grand with a coil sprung fork and an air shock. I think this is going to be a lot of money. I also don't think that this is necessarily going to be designed or intended to be for the folks who might otherwise be buying a bike that's less expensive, like an Aventon or a Rad Power or something like that. I wish that was the case. I don't think that's what it's going to be, at least at the start. I think the play here, the thing that's really interesting to me, is for people who aren't really cyclists currently, but are really into the Rivian, or they're really into having like the latest in tech and integration. And those people who aren't already on bikes are gonna see all of this level of integration, and they're gonna think that that price is a little bit more palatable. And from there, hopefully, that'll be one less driver on the road who's otherwise driving a mile to the nearest coffee shop or a couple of miles to drop off their kid or pick them up or go to work or something like that. I think that is what is really interesting here. And that, fingers crossed, also comes out with a bike that is less expensive and also one that is a long-tailed cargo bike, because I would love that very much also. Now, there is a whole lot more. I know I've been rambling, but I'm gonna tell you, look, I know I've been rambling. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's a whole lot more up now on Velo. We'll link it down below. You should go read that, go see all the images, and because there's a lot of quotes in there, and there's a lot that we learned, and I can't wait to share that all with you. And let me know, what do you think of this bike? Do you think it's as interesting as I claim it to be? Let me know in the comments down below, and we'll see you on the next one. Happy trails.